Hi, I'm Stacy. I hope you enjoy and are inspired to create. We're going to jump right into the card making. We're using the stamp of the month for July. It's called Enchanted Cozy Stories. We're going to go ahead and stamp out the girl here that has the different lanterns around her, and we're going to be creating a glow. I'm going to be using Memento Desert Sand ink for a no-line look, and also stamping that on some Strathmore marker cardstock 400 series. Still in search of a replacement for Express It blending cardstock. So when I stamped that out originally, the center of the lantern didn't stamp all the way, so I had to re-ink it. Most of the time when you're doing no line, you don't have to worry about that. And then I'm going to bring in alcohol markers. I use Copics, but use whatever ones you have. I'm going to start with my darkest shade, and I'm going to add some shadowing. Now I'm trying to keep in mind when I'm laying out these shadows to keep them more so to one side. The lantern is on the left side, so the shadows would be to the right, because I am going to try to create a glow from the lantern. And then I'll just go and I'll work to my mid, then my lightest. And then I'm trying to put a little shading because it is indicated that she has collarbones there, so I'm trying to add some shading behind those as well. And the hand was kind of tricky. I mean, the back portion of it would be shadowed, but the palm would actually have some lighting. But don't get too carried away with that, because just adding the glow around there and a little bit in certain areas pulls off the look, no matter how accurate it is. So try not to get too worried about making sure that they're all in the right place. It's just keep your shadows to one side, the opposite side of your light source. And then I'm working back out I went from my darkest to my lightest, and then I went back to my mid, then my lightest. And the hair, originally I was trying to keep the flowers on it. With no line coloring, it's can be more difficult because you don't have that black line to support. And you'll see that I color right over quite a few of them. And I'm just trying to add the shadows where the braid would actually naturally gather in the parts of the hair as well. You know, just so it has some variation. That's all I'm really worried about. And I'll come back in with pencils and refine that a bit more. Which, heads up, I didn't realize I didn't turn on my camera. A lot of times I put it in I use my phone. And when I film, I have to switch it to video mode, right? And I don't think I switched to video mode. I left it on just a photo, and I took a photo instead of recorded a video. It happens. It's pretty much the same as I always do, same like we're doing with the markers. So I'm doing the same thing with the hair. I'm working from my darkest to my lightest, and then I'll go back and work to my darkest again. And I'm just trying to put in some like different shading and different, you know, a little bit of strands in there. I'm not going to it won't be as detailed as when you add pencils, but, and the pencils will clean that up anyway. Just depends on the look you want. I really like colored pencils, even if you don't use colored pencils on the rest of your image. I really like it for hair, because it's much easier to get the strands of hair and the different shading for hair with colored pencils. But, you know, you just look at your markers as a base. And each time when I lay down my darkest, I try to go light-handed, and then I go over it with my mid, then I go to my lightest and go over everything. And then when I work back, I try to work back and put that mid over the dark and then the dark over the mid. And I believe I might have used 4 colors in the hair, so I wanted her hair to have like a reddish hue to it. You tell me if I achieved that. I think I did. And then when I go here on the dress, I'm just trying to add the darkest where those different lines will be, so that you could see the pleats and the folds in her dress. And then when I go back in with pencils, I add a little bit more detail there. And you could go as heavy with the shading in that or as light as you want. I think with this lighting source, you could go much more aggressive. And you're going to see with the dress, I should have done the bottom portion of the dress really dark, because in reality, the light source coming from the lanterns would make those more in shadow, but I didn't. So I still think it's a pretty effect, especially with the glow on the face and stuff that we're going to put in here with the markers. And then we'll also bring some pattern paper in from the Paper Pad Club of the Month. And we'll end up putting this whole thing together. So what was your guys' favorite product from the release? Whether it be from the box of the month, the junior box of the month, the Paper Pad Club, the stamp of the month, the different ephemeras. Which one did you like this month? Because they were all like fairy tale themed. I really fell in love with those card fronts when I saw them. And you guys, if you've watched me before, know that I struggle with pattern paper and card fronts because I always want to create everything from scratch, right? But those were beautiful, and some of the design team members, or not some, they all did a great job with the products, but there were a couple of design team members that used those card fronts that were so good. Like, I think Julie did that. Vaughn Marie, I believe, did that. I love her storybook one. I think it was Vaughn Marie with the one that she had on her thumbnail, I believe. And also, Shanna made, hers were really cool too. I like how she fussy cut them and combined them with different shaped dies. Those were cool. And I like how they just didn't put it on the card, but they altered it. They did, I mean, everybody did a great job. But that was really, those were fun to see. And they were one of my favorite products, but I didn't actually get that, so I may have to order some. But yeah. So you tell me, what was your favorite thing from the release? Okay, with the lantern, you know, it's kind of difficult because you want it, it's going to be lit, but those actual little sections of the lantern might be a little bit darker. You know, don't get too hung up on it. You're going to lay it out there. The glow is going to be what people pay attention to. So when I started doing these lanterns, originally I was just going to make them lighted from like the beam of the light coming out from the top and the bottom, but I decided to put it all the way around it because I thought it would play more so with the lantern. I think in reality they probably wouldn't put off that much light, but I still think it's just a fun effect. So you could decide whether or not you want to have most of the light illuminating from the top and the bottom, or they would come out of the lantern, but they would glow everywhere, but they would be stronger from the top and the bottom. And then I started with really what was my lightest Y marker, because if you look at an actual flame or something that's lit, it's usually brightest where your actual flame or light source is, and then it kind of darkens on the way out. But I think when we color, we do it opposite. And so I tried to do that. You'll have to decide, because I also, when I put in the sky, it's lighter. So when you create yours, you have to decide what kind of look you want to go for. I think either one of those is going to look really good, because if you're going for more realism, though, you would want to go with lighter and then have it darken a little bit on the way out. But this is not. So play around with it and don't get too hung up. And this would be fun if you have one of those light kits, you know, the lights. I know there's different brands to put behind these lanterns. That would be fun. and have it be an interactive card in that way. So what I did was I went and I worked from those yellows from the lightest to the darkest, and then I went from the lightest to the darkest in cool grays, because as you're going away from the lanterns, it would get darker. And then I'll come back in and I'll work those both different ways. Now, when you lay down the yellow, I should probably say this: test over your colors, because if you have a color that's too dark, like, I don't know if you noticed it, like lifted it, and I overlaid over the colors that I already colored with, right? So play with it and test it on a scratch piece of paper and see how much it's going to lift or not lift. And then you may have to adjust of it not being able to lift it enough if you're using a really dark color, and you may have to kind of do more so like the sky here and work it where you're laying it down on the white cardstock and then working the color back over that lighter color. Most of the time when I've tried this, it's lifted those other colors enough to look like it's illuminated. But you may have to do it more in the opposite order, like I'm doing with the lanterns. As you could see, I didn't lay the color down and then lift it that way, which, try it. I didn't. I just went the other way. And then I am going to go and try to darken up that background more. It wasn't dark enough for me. I think I used a C7 originally, and now I'm bringing in a C8. In reality, I could have probably went in with a C9 or 10 and really had it, dark. That's the cool thing about alcohol markers, is you can just keep layering them. See how the bottom of her dress is much lighter? That in reality would have been darker. But the sentiment goes over that and actually covers that up. See, now I'm coming back in with that yellow. I'm going over the gray, that Y00, and that's going to blend the yellow and the gray together and help it look illuminated versus just going from one stark yellow to the gray. And then I brought in the paper pad, one of the paper pads from the club of the month. I brought in Enchanted Tower Tales. So I actually chose her dress based off of this pattern paper and the goldish color, because we're using the lanterns. And I think originally I was going to bring one in from the other paper pad, or no, from this one that had some pinks. That's why I did the lanterns pink. But I didn't choose that one. I decided to go with the ones that had the moon. And as you can see, I cut it sideways. I cut it the wrong way. It doesn't matter in the end because there's so little that peeks out of that yellow moon, but you can't totally tell what it is, so it's just supporting in color. I thought about cutting out another piece, but I didn't want to waste the pretty paper. Are you guys like that? So I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment from the stamp of the month that says, "Let your light shine." Now, I use an anti-static tool. I'm using ultra fine detailed embossing powder. This sentiment is so fine that you definitely want to use an ultra fine embossing powder. And then I just cut that down with a paper trimmer and use my scissors to trim off the edge. As you can see, we popped up that center panel. Going to glue down our sentiment. And then we're going to come back in with some other little details that'll make it, I think, magical. I'm going to use some stickles. I thought that the glitter that you get from that is a bit different than using a shimmer pen, which I put the shimmer pen all over the lights. I don't think I showed that. And then I'm bringing in a white Posca pen. You could use a gel pen. You could use a acrylic paint marker, and I colored over the little magical fairy dust in the image, and then I'm adding more, and I'm overlapping it on the lantern, a little bit of her hair, the skies, and the luminaries. What are those? The lanterns in the sky. And then here she is all finished. I really like that effect with the white pen. I think it adds just some magic. Thanks for spending some time with me, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.